Hello, my friends. So this is part 2 of Scott Johnson's interpretation, I guess would be the best word, of the Druids and the Wicker Man.
You're traveling through to another dimension, a dimension of not only paranoia and delusion, but of idiocy. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of pure ignorance. Your next stop, the BatShitCrazy Zone.
What we have next to look at is this thing called the Wicker Man. I'm going to key on this a little bit. I think this is pretty noteworthy.
Now, before we continue, let's look at where this concept of burning a Wicker Man comes from. The concept of this Wicker Man primary source is Caesar when he was conquering Gaul, and he encountered the Druids, which he says were the priests and the priests of the Celtic people. And back then there were all kinds of various tribes, and these tribes were not always united. Sometimes there was a lot of infighting, and so there was no like unified nation of the Celts. It was just a bunch of various different tribes. However, these Druids were able to pass between these tribes and kind of act as judges and mediators, and they held a great deal of power in Celtic society. Probably as much power as the wealthy and the warlords who ruled over these people. So this concept of the Wicker Man comes from the Julius Caesar's Conquest of Gaul, Book 6, Chapter 12, where he writes, "And they have sacrifices of that kind ordained for national purposes. Others have figures of vast size, limbs of which formed of osiers, which is a type of wicker. They fill with living men, which, being set on fire, the men perish enveloped in the flames. They consider that the oblation of such as have been taken in theft or in robbery or any other offense is more acceptable to the immortal gods. But when a supply of that class is wanting, they have recourse to the oblation of even the innocent." So basically what Julius Caesar is claiming is that the Druids would take criminals and put them in these wicker effigies and then burn them and sacrifice them. However, and I'll put a link to this below, if you actually analyze this concept, it starts to really break down. And Julius Caesar did not have any reason to try and record everything that he saw accurately. He had no reason to make the Druids sound or paint them in any kind of a good light, because he was trying to maintain support from the Roman Senate to further his conquest of Gaul as far west as he possibly could. So it was in his best interest to make the Druids and the Celts in general look like very barbaric, superstitious, dumb people. And he succeeded. Even to this day, we consider them barbarians, and we consider them to be not as gifted as the Romans. And the evidence is actually showing that they were quite skilled. But regardless. So first, we would have to overcome the structural integrity, then getting the creatures and humans inside the Wicker Man and support the weight. Then, once the fire has been started, how would you prevent the animals and humans inside from escaping? As soon as the fire spread to the base, which are the feet, the whole structure would topple over. So this concept of human sacrifice using a huge Wicker Man is highly questionable. It indeed may have been an effigy, and Julius Caesar simply made it more exciting by adding the human sacrifice to it.
They would actually erect the Druids, prior to this, anywhere from 20 to 30 foot tall, what they call Wicker Man, okay, that would have different compartments or cages inside it. Wicker, as you know, is a very, very durable material, okay, and that it can actually be burned. This Wicker Man was actually written by Julius Caesar. He actually confirmed this in Julius Caesar's writings in his commentaries on the Gallic War. He actually talked about this, that this is the way that they did things, okay?
No, Caesar did not confirm this. He was the primary source.
We're going to reference that a little bit more in a second. What would happen then is they would actually bring the human sacrifices and they would put them into the Wicker Man in these particular cages that they had set up in the Wicker Man. There's no way you could get out of these cages. What would then happen is that Cernunnos, the demon or fallen angel of fire, would then be summoned.
Cernunnos is the deity he showed in part 1 and called Samhain. Scott Johnson did absolutely no research whatsoever. If he would have discovered that Samhain is the name of a season, with its etymological roots going back to Proto-Indo-European language, and that Cernunnos was a deity fitting the description of the images he showed, which even clearly have the name on the statue. Archaeologists and historians do not know specifically what deity, if any, is associated with the effigy of a Wicker Man.
See, there's different fallen angels, there's different demons that do different things. They have different specialties. Cernunnos happened to be supposedly the god of fire.
No, if anything, the deity we call Cernunnos, from the Greek the horned one, would be a god of hunting or of magicians, not necessarily fire.
Victims would then be consumed in the fire as an offering to Lord Samhain.
As I mentioned in part 1, there is no Lord Samhain. Samhain is the name of a season.
And this would typically be done at midnight. Okay, so now on Halloween midnight, just understand that I'm not saying all witches are erecting Wicker Mans. I'm not saying all witches are offering human sacrifices. A lot of them are probably offering maybe animal sacrifice. They're going to do what they can get away with, okay? And it depends on the level of witchcraft they're at.
No, they are not going to do what they can get away with. Modern witches today are not trying to get away with sacrificing animals or humans. If any animals are being killed, it is for food, and the animal in question would be honored.
If you're in white witchcraft, they may not do anything. They may not offer any kind of human sacrifice or even an animal. But those that are into the black arts, preferably this is the way they would celebrate Halloween, okay? These human offerings were done to appease their gods. They believed that this had to be done in order to appease their gods.
No. I am not sure where you are getting this information that animal sacrifice was done to appease the gods.
This is where we also get the tradition of, you ever heard bonfires? Well, those are actually, they were also called moor fires, but bonfires is basically a shortened version of bone fires, where you're burning people alive. That's where we get the tradition of bonfires.
Yes, that is correct. The term bonfire does come from the terms bone and fire. It is a large open-air fire used as part of a celebration for burning trash or as a signal. However, it originates from the late Middle English. The term originally denoted a large open-air fire on which bones were burned, sometimes as part of a celebration. Also, one for burning heretics or prescribed literature. It does not go back to the 1st century BCE, the time period Dr. Scott is suggesting. It may have meant a large open fire hot enough to burn heretics to nothing but bones. During the 11th to the 14th century, when the word bonfire supposedly originates.
They believed that the veil separating the physical world from the spiritual world were their thinnest, and that these spirits could cross over on that night into our physical world the easiest.
What? You actually got something right. Woohoo!
these bonfires or bonfires, or now this Wicker Man burning, were lit to guide the spirits to the physical world as though they needed help. And then what happened then is that the costumes this is where we get the tradition of costumes, okay?
Well, that was short-lived.
Costumes were worn by the pagans in order to supposedly keep certain evil spirits in line. Okay? They were grotesque, horrible monster outfits worn to frighten evil spirits. That's essentially what they believed, that they had to wear these costumes. This is where we get all the traditions for Halloween.
No. We get the idea of costumes from masquerade balls. America, during the early 1900s, made costumes a big part of the Halloween celebrations. Again, I have done a video on Halloween, the differences between Halloween and Samhain, and I will put a link below and at the end of this video.
I think we just about covered just about everything with the traditions. The Druids believe that on the night before November 1st, October 31st, Samhain called together the wicked souls of the spirits which had been condemned to live in the bodies of animals during the year which had just transpired. Since they were afraid of these spirits, they chose October 31st as a day to sacrifice to their gods, hoping that they would protect them.
I don't even know how to address this. This is complete fiction. There isn't anything I have come across to support this.
So see, these sacrifices, these human sacrifices in particular, or whatever sacrifices they were making, were done for protection for themselves. They were also done many times to ensure a good harvest. Remember, it's the harvest festival that Christians try to evolve from this. Blessings in regard to that. Since they were afraid of these spirits, they chose October 31st as the day to sacrifice their gods, hoping they would receive protection. They really believed that on this day they were surrounded by strange spirits, ghosts, witches, fairies, and elves who came out to hurt them. In addition to this, they also believed that cats were holy animals, and they considered them to represent people who lived formerly.
What? Again, I have no idea where he's getting this.
Which is a lie from the pit of hell, because that's reincarnation. And as punishment for the evil deeds, were reincarnated as a cat. All this explains why witches, ghosts, and cats are part of the Halloween thing today. So what I'm trying to do is tie it all into today. Where did we get all these traditions from? Remember, the Bible says, through the traditions of men, you've made the word of God of none effect. Now, I'm going to veer off here a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about this Wicker Man. Now, I got this off Wikipedia on the Wicker Man. And they even got a little picture from a 1973 British film called The Wicker Man. And there was also a film this year made, or in 2006, called The Wicker Man. I saw excerpts of that one. Today, a Wicker Man is burned as part of neo-pagan festivities, especially Beltane, a rite of spring. Beltane is May 1st. It's probably the second highest satanic holiday that there is. And every single high satanic holiday, okay, including Yule and Christmas, including Valentine's Day, including Ishtar, Easter, believe it or not, Groundhogs Day is one of them, including Halloween,
Scott, you obviously do not understand the differences between ancient pagan holidays, modern pagan adaptations of those holidays, and clearly you have no concept of what Satanists believe or what they celebrate and or value as a holiday. Christmas is not a pagan holiday. What some pagans call Yule is the winter solstice, a pagan holiday. It is celebrated by some pagans today. Same with Valentine's Day, Easter, and Groundhog's Day is not a pagan holiday. From History.com, in 1887, Groundhog's Day, featuring a rodent meteorologist, is celebrated for the first time at Gobbler's Knob in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. According to tradition, if a groundhog comes out of its hole on this day and sees its shadow, there will be 6 more weeks of winter weather. No shadow means an early spring. Groundhog's Day may be adapted from ancient Christian tradition of Candlemas Day, when clergy would bless and distribute candles needed for winter. The candles represented how long and cold the winter would be. Germans expanded on this concept by selecting an animal, the hedgehog, as a means of predicting weather. Once they came to America, German settlers, especially in Pennsylvania, continued the tradition, although they switched from hedgehogs to groundhogs, which were plentiful in the Keystone State. As it stands, Groundhog's Day has nothing to do with ancient pagan tradition.
In their purest form, every single one of these holidays, if you're at the highest levels, require human sacrifice in order to practice the religion in the proper Satanism in the proper way. Why should this surprise anybody? Doesn't Satan come to, kill and destroy and steal? I mean, isn't that what he's all about? Why would this be a big surprise that Satanism at its highest levels would practice human sacrifice, knowing we can look back in the Bible, and it's all through the Bible, letting your children pass through the fire to appease gods in order to gain some type of financial or prosperous blessing? It's all throughout the Bible. And you're telling me that we're living in a day and time that's just as wicked as them? I'm sure it's more wicked in a lot of ways. And you're telling me that this doesn't go on ever? And we're more wicked than they? I don't think so. Just a little more hidden. Just like abortion, is basically human sacrifice or child sacrifice. It's just done in the womb, in darkness. So that it makes it more palatable because you don't actually see, the baby being mutilated. Now, in the near future, we're going to be doing a whole teaching. I know I touched on this before with the abortion, but we're going to be doing a whole teaching on the sacrament of the abortion, that the witches believe. There's many witches that have written about abortion as a sacrament.
I did a video response to Scott's talk on abortion and witchcraft here. Not going to address this now. The link to that video, again, will be in the down box below.
Something that they do as part of their religion. Well, this is no different what we're talking about today with Halloween. This is something that's part of their religion that they do.
How can you possibly talk about our religion when you don't even have the slightest comprehension of our main holiday of Samhain, and one of the most popular male deities named as Cernunnos? Simply because you confuse these two things illustrates clearly you have no idea what you are talking about.
The Wickerman Festival is an annual rock and dance music event that takes place in Kirkcudbrightshire, Scotland. Now, remember, what I just talked about was from the Druids in the Middle Ages.
The Druids lived during the period known as ancient history to classical antiquity, from 400 BCE to approximately 300 AD. Not during the Middle Ages, which were approximately from the 5th century AD to the 15th century AD.
Now let's flash forward to today. Is there anything being done with this Wicker Man today? Well, what did we just read here? It's the Wickerman Festival. It's an annual rock and dance music. I mean, that's appropriate. It's a rock concert, dance thing. In Scotland, its main feature is the burning of a large wooden effigy on the last night. Similarly, a Wicker Man is burned each year at the Buster Ancient Farm in Hampshire, England. And the American Burning Man Festival features a large burnable man as well. The Burning Man, they hold that, they just have that out in Arizona. I don't know how many people they had this year. It was like 50,000 people or 100,000 or something out in the desert in Arizona. You heard of this? It's called the Burning Man. Yeah, man, we're getting the band back together. Let's go out to the desert and act like pagans. And I'm serious, this is what they do. They go out there and they absolutely, it's like, I don't know, a week or two of total debauchery. And the height of it, they burn this man, an effigy, this big. So see, this Wicker Man thing is very appropriate for today, and it's going to be becoming more and more appropriate as the world gets more wicked.
So this is the end of my video response to Dr. Scott talking about paganism and the Wicker Man. I hope I have corrected some of the misinformation that he has given in his videos. There will be a link below if you would like to watch the whole video for yourself. So, thank you and blessed be.